Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and tonight is January the 18th. Hi all, in a week where we find out kids are eating laundry pods and others are filming a man in a wheelchair being bludgeoned to death by American cops and not intervening. In Riverside County, California, sheriff deputies entered the house where a married couple was said to be holding their 13 emaciated children captive in shackles. Cops thought they were all minors and yet found out that 7 of them were 18 to 29. Corey Good thinks he's the biblical Enoch. Given he's part of the Nazi SS small p, perhaps he meant Enoch Powell. I mean, Wells to Fargo is going on here. Drake announces his use. Wilcock hails Ra, and half the internet is wrapped up by RV bullshit or Q drivel. Fulford put out his latest drivel this week, a person claiming to be His Excellency, His Royal Highness indeed, Ernest Rothschild. Best not. Apparently, according to this clown, he's the Royal Prime Minister of the United States of North America. And he contacted Mr. Fulford with his claim, except that was a 4-year-old loop story that was bullshit then, and it's bullshit now. And he claims that the federal United States of America comes under the banner of USNA, as in US not applicable. That clown and his family of miscreants and psychos, they had control of the accounts for a long time and did nothing. Now they don't have control of them and they're pushing that suddenly they're all now humanitarian oriented. Really? Pull the other one, Roth. It's got balls on. We're not falling for it. And Trump spends his time not draining the swamp, but doing primetime TV and fake news awards. The world is all a stage show with a whole heap of bad actors in it. And people, even in the awake group, swallow it all. I and many others who spend many hours trying to educate people and trying to build a better world wonder what we are actually saving here. A group of nations of spineless, uncaring morons who have completely lost the plot. And you do wonder at times, what are we saving? And why did we bother? It's all a land of confusion. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and tonight is January the 18th. One day before the budget. We'll have more than that. There's a fair chunk of intel tonight, and not too much in the way of op-ed, but a long pondering piece that will interest many. So we'll look forward to that in the second hour. Alright, where do we start? Saturday at 7 PM Eastern Time, I'll be doing the return of An Evening with Thomas with Aidan Ellis, and he'll be on Saturday at 7 PM Eastern Standard Time. Sunday I'm also on OYM in a series called Challenging Thomas, so that should be interesting, and that's at 2 PM on Sunday. Right, where are we? Let's get into the show. And the email for the show is truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com, and the link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user/8955881. The article's website, which includes all the archives and also the live link for tonight's show, is thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. Facebook social media alternative is MeWe.com. Either private message me with your email or send an email to the Truth, Honour and Integrity@gmail.com. And the People's Club donation website, everything about the foundation is at thepeoplesclub.org. Right, like I said in that opening piece, it's getting more and more insane as the days go by. And, I try to not make it miserable and depressing. And but we face some serious issues, not only in America, but in all around the world. And I've pulled some news items that covers fair chunks of around the world, and we'll get into that shortly. In fact, we'll get into it now. Finland. We're going to start off with Finland. This is at least a more positive sounding piece anyway. And Finland have decided to give some residents a basic income. So we've heard this a lot recently. And Finland are trying it out, and the basic income is $16,000 for 2 years, no strings attached. And basically they wanted to see what the people, they've been running it for 2 years, and wanted to see what people did with the money, and a test program to do that. Now, historically, the idea of a basic income has cropped up a number of times when people want to right an economic wrong, and we all know there's massive economic problems. We will cover that extensively in not only the news items but also the intel. Now, it's in a book called Thomas More 1516 Utopia, which describes a society that has no crime because it can provide everyone with some means of livelihood, so that nobody is under the frightful necessity of becoming a thief. There was a lot of thieving going on back then. Why? Because there was too many haves and have-nots again. You know, there are people who get into life of crime because they don't have. Some people just do it for the sake of it, but a lot is the former. Now, there was also a 1796 pamphlet by an American political theorist, Thomas Paine. People will be more familiar with that name, who argued for the creation of a national fund out of which every person, rich or poor, would receive £15, which is about $19-20, once he or she turned 21, and £10 every year thereafter. It doesn't seem a lot now, but this is, 232 years ago? No, 220 years ago. Pretty much 22 years ago. And he stated that Earth's resources were supposed to be available for everyone, and he argued so people deserve compensation in part for the system of landed property. And with the US facing growing income inequality, a tenuous healthcare system, and the likelihood that technology will soon eliminate many jobs, basic income, you have to say, may be catching on here also. I don't know how they can, well, I do, because some of them are complete psychopaths, but if predictions from places such as the consultant firm PwC and McKinsey Global Institute are right, tens of millions of Americans will see their jobs become automated within the next decade. Where is the income coming from? So they can't have it both ways. They want us to buy all kinds of their rubbish, but if you've got no money, there's nothing to buy with. And so something has to give. Now, these losses would be on top of in addition to the 7 million manufacturing jobs in the US that has shed since 1980. 7 million gone. So Finland's trying it out and seeing what a test of what people will spend the money on. I hope it's the right things, like the basics in life, and not on luxury cars and etc., etc. But I have a feeling it'll come up again here. I don't see any other solution at the moment. And the fact that Thomas Paine argued for the creation of a national fund back in 1796, he must have been aware there was already a fund and wanted to take a portion out and call it the National Fund. This is a big issue that's going on now. Further evidence of jobs decline this week. According to all government and financial experts, everything's fantastic, except Walmart's just shed 63 Sam's Club stores and a whole heap of jobs to go with it. And then we come to General Electric. Mr. John Flannery, a man who was hired to fix General Electric's mess, and he inherited a 31 billion ticking time bomb when he replaced the previous CEO, Jeff Immelt, last year. Or perhaps it's Jeff Immelt. And the 31 billion shortfall is on the pension funds. Just like everywhere else, they've spent it on their luxury jets and all the other nonsense. Now, more than 600,000 current and former GE employees are relying on these crucial retirement benefits, and the pension shortfall is yet more evidence of GE's financial troubles, which has forced the iconic, I wouldn't use that term, I would say Nazi sellouts, personally, if history is proven correct, to slash its dividend last year for just the second time since the Great Depression. Oops. Now, Gautam Kahana, an analyst for Cohen and Co., said GE's balance sheet is a complete and utter mess, and they don't generate a lot of cash, and they have severely underfunded the pension plan. In other words, they've stolen out of it. People have paid it in. They've just used it for their own ends. Now, under the new CEO, Mr. Flannery, GE have now announced recently to tackle the pension problem, and their solution of tackling it is to take advantage of cheap borrowing costs. It's just sheer lunacy. So GE has said it will now borrow $6 billion in 2018 to cover mandatory pension payments through to 2020. They're going to borrow it. That's how America got into big trouble. It was always borrowing, not producing. Anything we did produce was stolen by the Crown and others. And now it's coming home to roost. Reality is that borrowing won't fix the problem. And basically, like the American government and other countries as well, it's just swapping one IOU for another, like the bonds. Not much in the way of Mr. Trump, but it's not that I want to highlight this particular story, but I want to have something to say, as it's getting beyond the joke now. He said, she said. It doesn't really matter whether he did say it or he didn't say it. It's just becoming a drama series, and the country's just literally going down the pan. So it came out this week that President Trump arranged a $130,000 payment to a former adult film star a month before the 2016 election as part of an agreement that precluded her from publicly discussing an alleged sexual encounter with Mr. Trump. Ms. Clifford, whose stage name is Stormy Daniels, has privately alleged the encounter with Mr. Trump took place after they met at a July 2006 celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. Who cares? Really? You know? But to throw in into the mix, this was 1 year after Trump married Melania Trump in 2005. So this was an extramarital affair. The reality is this. Who cares if Trump is dipping his dick where men have gone before him? She's a porn star. Who cares? You know, the only banging I want to hear about Trump is jail doors for swamp cleaning. Period. And not just the dead ones either. Like all of them. That's the only banging about Trump I want to hear. Not that he allegedly banged some bloody porn star 12 years ago. It's getting beyond a joke. The Sandy Hook issue reared its head again this week. Some evidence was released on a report concluded after the 2012, is that 6 years already, in Sandy Hook, police officials not involved in the investigation and dignitaries were allowed into the building and potentially contaminated the crime scene by stepping on bullet casings and glass shards that had to be processed as evidence. This was according to a state police report that was released last Friday on their response to the mass shooting. Point is, who were those dignitaries and why were they there? That's what I'd like the state police to go and investigate. Who allowed them to be there, and name them, not just put dignitaries, name them. What were they there for? Now, the long-awaited report concludes state police handled the response effectively, except a lot of them were roadblocked from entering the building. But it recommends improvements to protecting crime scene integrity, dealing with victims' families and other issues. Like I said, the question is, who were the dignitaries and why were they allowed there? What was their purpose? You know, this smacks of the other same fake event that happened around the same time, just before that, I think. The Casey Anthony trial. Those of you that remember that. And the news media were showing a video of all kinds of people trampling all over the crime scene. None of it was fenced off, so that people who are experienced in going through crime scenes know where to step and where not to step. No, all and sundry was marching in. Now, is that the way they operate? Or is this another example of, we'll mess up because it wasn't a real event to begin with? I don't think that Casey Anthony was real either. All fake drama. Maybe I'm wrong, who knows? We all get cynical. Now off to Syria. Key powers that are involved in Syria's civil war, although it's not particularly civil, and it's largely been dealt with by outside influence and nothing to do with Syria, but there you go. But the key powers have criticised the United States' plans to help an allied Kurdish-led militia set up a 30,000 strong border security fence. Appears we're having to cough up for that as well, because that will come out of our funds and our budget. 30,000 Kurdish. What for? Is that America first? Clearly not. And Turkey's president has vowed to suffocate efforts to begin training members of the Syrian Democratic Forces and create what he called a terror army. Ankara considers Kurds fighting for the SDF to be part of a terrorist group, and Syria's government decried the blatant attack on its sovereignty, and Russia warned it could lead to a partition. Really interesting wording from Russia. You mean caliphate? Anyway, with the help of airstrikes from the US-led coalition, the SDF had captured tens of thousands of square kilometers of territory from the so-called Islamic State. In October, the alliance took full control of the northern city of Raqqa, the de facto capital of the caliphate, declared by the jihadist group in 2014. Since then, SDF fighters have been advancing southeastwards along the Euphrates River. Please go and look at the map and watch what's unfolding. Now, the BSF will be tasked with securing, which is the border security force, the long sections of Syria's northern border with Turkey and eastern border with Iraq that are currently under SDF control, as well as parts of the Euphrates River Valley, which effectively serves as the dividing line between the SDF and the Syrian pro-government forces. All getting far too obvious. And this is the kind of confusion, land of confusion world we live in. California. 9 people this week have been charged for selling drugs, prostitution. No. Handing out food to the homeless. Really. Which, according to the fascist authorities, is violating a rule about sharing food in public places. So you can't go to the ball game, order one burger and split it with your partner. Otherwise you're in violation. You end up in court. I mean, why are we allowing this? The group were protesting against an emergency ordinance in the city of El Cajon, which was introduced in response to California's alleged hepatitis A outbreak. They handed out food, clothes and toiletries on Sunday before police arrived and issued citations. And the report goes on to say hepatitis A can be spread by touching contaminated food or objects. Really. The recent outbreak of the viral disease, or the alleged viral disease, or introduced viral disease, is probably the more apt saying, has taken allegedly a severe toll on California's homeless populations. Or perhaps they were vaccinated, who are at most risk as they do not have access to basic hygiene and sanitation. People actually say that, those statements, and are completely oblivious to what they've just said. So you don't give food to the homeless because it might be contaminated with hepatitis A, and the homeless might get sick. But at the same time, the homeless are at risk because they do not have access to basic hygiene and sanitation. Again, this is the land of confusion. So why don't you provide them with basic hygiene and sanitation? Then you have no hepatitis A. No, let's pull people into court, fine them, and collect more money off them. More money that they haven't got, so the more money they have to borrow. It defies belief. There's another recent event. It's not too shocking, but it's a sign of the times. The creeping totalitarian Big Brother overreach. More than 1,000 young people have been charged by police in Denmark with distributing sexually explicit material. They are accused of using Facebook Messenger to share an indecent video clip of two 15-year-olds having sex. It's probably their friends, and it just went viral. Police said it could amount to distribution of indecent images of children, as the two people filmed were under 18. It's 18 for their laws. Facebook tipped off the US authorities. Why did they notify the US authorities when it happened in Denmark? Who then went on to notify police in Denmark. 1,004 young people across the country are facing charges after allegedly circulating the material via the Facebook Messenger app in autumn of last year. Those people, people do things like that without thinking of the consequences, but those people could end up on the sex register list, which then hampers the rest of their life. Really that necessary to charge them and not just give a warning? Or why was Facebook allowing it? They've got all these algorithms and AI and bots and all this. Why is that material still being allowed to go across their platform? Why wasn't Facebook charged? Because they do know when you post stuff that's considered not correct. They nearly blocked me from Facebook this week because I posted a picture of Dick Cheney with a penis on his head. They deemed that as offensive. Personally, I think it's fitting. Dickhead Cheney. But then you're getting into who comes up with the idea is what is offensive and what is not. All very fascist, isn't it? I want to thank Tyler Durden for this piece. Zero Hedge. Do some good stuff on there. President Trump followed in the footsteps this week of his predecessors by acting in the interest of Wall Street and using the distraction to do something that was not in the best interests of the American people. Mr. Durden went on, he pardoned 5 mega banks for rampant fraud and corruption, which is especially notable because of the amount of money that Mr. Trump allegedly owes them. Now, Trump, even under most people's reading skills, most people be aware Trump has been connected with the Deutsche Bank since the 1990s. And it was reported by the Financial Times that he owes the bank at least 130 million in outstanding loans secured in properties in Miami, Chicago and Washington. However, the report also claimed that the actual number is likely much nearer 300 million. Reports also claim that Deutsche was the only bank willing to lend Trump money after his companies faced multiple bankruptcies, 6 times, I believe. And that particular relationship has continued over the years, and an analysis from the Wall Street Journal claimed that Trump had received at least $2.5 billion in loans from the Deutsche Bank over the last 20 years. $2.5 billion. And there were concerns about Trump's ties to the bank becoming a conflict of interest dating back to the 2016 election. Now, during the week of Christmas, the Federal Register announced that the Trump administration had issued waivers to the Citigroup, JP Morgan, Barclays, UBS and the Deutsche Bank. All those 5 mega banks were facing charges of fraud and corruption. And this latest decision to pardon the banks, you have to say, comes in stark contrast to one of Trump's most applauded campaign promises, that he would finally stand up against Wall Street and demand that the most powerful banks be held accountable to the public. Quote from Mr. Trump: "I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder. Wall Street has caused tremendous problems for us. We're going to tax Wall Street." This is something Mr. Trump said back in a campaign rally in January 2016, and yet in the past few weeks has kind of waived the issues. Waivers: Citigroup, JP Morgan, Barclays, UBS and the Deutsche. That's not good. As predicted in this show, we did give a forecast, which is not something I often do. Deadlines and dates, we've all had enough of them. But it was stated in November, by the end of February, sometime between then and the end of February, that Bitcoin would collapse. And a lot of people would lose their money, including a lot of people in the alternative media. And Bitcoin and the other digital currencies, of course, we've all seen how volatile it is. 1 minute it's going up ridiculous amounts in a day, and then the next minute it's going down. And it's almost like a roller coaster. But a big daily drop is kind of unusual. That said, Tuesday this week was a particularly ugly day for all crypto investors. It wasn't just Bitcoin, as every major currency fell by the lowest was 15% and the highest 28% in one day. And the top 10 currencies had collectively lost 108 billion in 24 hours as of 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. 108 billion lost. To put that into perspective, that figure is roughly the equivalent to a quarter of the value of Amazon or Berkshire Hathaway, or the total value of McDonald's or Boeing. 108 billion. Now, Bitcoin lost the most in terms of value, roughly 39.2 billion in one day, but only 16% of its overall market cap, while once high-flying Ripple, which I've never heard of, more nonsense, dropped 27.4 on a loss of 19 billion in one day. Gamble, gamble, gamble. Now, this could have been put into some of the intel, but it kind of broke. And this should raise large concerns in this country, given how I think Hannah von Reitz has covered it probably more than most, about government services, the 19 government services, and how they run everything. Well, Cabinet ministers in the UK have concluded a crisis meeting this week about keeping vital public services going after the collapse of the contractor Carillion this week. Now, this contractor provided services for schools, prisons and hospitals has gone into liquidation. Now, the Labour leader in the UK said in the wake of the collapse of Carillion, it's time to put an end to the rip-off privatisation policies that have done serious damage to our public services and fleeced the public of billions of pounds. That's should be said here, and just change pounds for dollars. Carillion itself ran into trouble after losing money on big public sector contracts and running up huge debts of around $1.5 billion, and the government is stepping in to pay employees and small businesses. No, the government's not stepping in to pay employees. The people are. The government doesn't have any money, only ours. So we're now, having already paid for these services, they've now overspent on lavish jets, etc., and corporate parties and whatever else they get up to. And now suddenly the public in the UK are being asked to pay again. How many more times are we going to continue to pay for the same service? So the people have stepped in to pay employees and small businesses working on Carillion's public contracts and assess the distribution of contracts amongst other companies. That may have a snowball effect. How are we doing? Okay. US authorities have arrested a former CIA officer accused of disclosing top secret information to China. Really? The man could be sentenced up to 10 years in prison if convicted. Jerry Chun-Shing Lee was detained on Monday night after landing at JFK. On Tuesday, the former CIA employee was charged with unlawful retention of national defense information by the Eastern District Court of New York. The judge ordered that Lee be held without bail. US federal authorities accuse Lee of violating the terms of his top secret clearance and conditions of non-disclosure agreements he signed with the agency when he worked for them from 1994 through 2007. Now, Lee's disclosures reportedly led to a crackdown on the CIA's informants in China starting in 2010. And the 53-year-old is at the centre of a mole hunt for years. Now, whether or not Lee is responsible for exposing CIA operatives in China has not yet been announced. Perhaps we should change Anne's name, because Mr. Lee's been dragged in for charged with unlawful retention of national defense information. Bit like Huma Abedin, bit like Hillary Clinton. So perhaps we should change Anne's name, as seemingly it seems to be that the authorities only have interest in arresting Chinese and Russians. Perhaps we should start naming Hillary Clinton and Hillary Clintovsky or something. We might get her arrested then. You know, this is something from 11 years ago. There's something ongoing now. So why isn't Anne being arrested? On and on it goes. A group hoping to break away in California because of high taxes and unhappiness of how the state is run. Yeah, like arresting people for giving somebody else food who haven't got any, really. Has apparently declared independence for the New California. The group's leaders released the Declaration of Independence on Monday in the hopes that it will eventually lead to independence from the state capital, Sacramento. Unlike the Calexit movement, which is looking for independence from the United States for the entire state of California, this New California group wants to remain part of the US, but no longer wants to be governed by the state of California. Perhaps they don't like Mr. Brown. Now this, yes, again, so this is the third there seems to be an awful lot, we already know, with fires and directed energy weapons and droughts and deluges and all kinds of other fun and games. There seems to be an awful lot more going on there than most people realise. And law enforcement officials in Northern California this week have stated they will refuse to assist federal authorities in the up-and-coming sweeps that aim to capture more than 1,500 illegal immigrants. It was reported about a planned operation to be conducted by the US Immigration, Customs and Enforcement Agency, more commonly known as ICE, and the report did not specify a date, but it said it will be conducted in the near future. But law enforcement officials told the paper they have not been notified as of Wednesday, but said they would not provide support for it. Now, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, nice German name, told reporters that police in their city will not assist ICE officials if the report on the raids is accurate. Federal officials' ability to work with local jurisdictions was curtailed on January the 1st after a new California law, SB 54, came into effect that limited interagency cooperation. The law officially made California the first sanctuary state. Indeed. I wonder if we can get some of those cops to go all around the country and not conform. Maybe we might get something done. Might get something done if they stop bludgeoning people to death for no apparent reason. Well, we think we've got it bad. Life in Venezuela. The world seems to have forgotten about Venezuela. We highlighted it a number of months ago. But this is a stark reality of a typical day in Caracas, Venezuela, where you are only allowed to go to the bank to collect your money at specific times and specific days. So this reporter spent 4 hours at 4 banks and collected a grand total of 6 cents. As Venezuela has sunk to new depths, prices have skyrocketed and the currency, the bolivar, has become next to worthless. Supermarkets and banks have become scenes of confusion and chaos. People don't know whether they're open or not. Do they have money or food? How much can I get? And inflation is so rampant, some experts say it ran above 4,000% last year. And basically that has devoured people's salary. As this reporter put, $1 fetches about 191,000 bolivars. $1. According to the black market exchange rate that everyone uses, nobody trusts the overvalued official rate because the government has lost credibility amongst ordinary Venezuelans and in international markets that determine exchange rates. Good on them. 1 year ago, the dollar fetched 3,100 bolivars. 3,100. And yet on January the 11th, last Thursday, a dollar would have gotten that person 151,000 bolivars. You know, 3,000 to 151,000. This is what happens to Germany. And this is what created the rise of Hitler. The banks were raping largely Rothschilds. I didn't say Jewish banks, but people will get the gist. It's not the Jewish people, it's these Khazarian Hebrew clowns. And he threw them all out, and suddenly Germany's economy was one of the strongest in the world. Went from 4 marks to the pound to 20,000. So you needed wheelbarrows full of these notes just to get a loaf of bread. This is what is happening here, because Venezuela won't play the Rothschilds game. They won't have a Rothschilds bank. They won't play oil games. So basically crush the country. And then when they've got nothing left, these clowns come in, like the Clinton Foundation in Haiti, and buy up the whole land and everything for pennies on the dollar. We'll hear more about that soon. Now, Venezuela's banking authority, not the government, I'll repeat that again. Venezuela's banking authority tells banks every month how much customers can withdraw at one time. But it doesn't, but the banking authority doesn't make that amount available to the public. Unbelievable. The foundation people tried to send money to help the Venezuelans, and clowns blocked it. I don't know whether they made further attempts. I can't keep up with everything. But that's part of the fun and games that's going on. Right, we're going to have a music break. Perhaps this will go out to the Venezuelan people. Could go out to a whole heap of people, if I'm quite honest. What about us? We'll be back with the intel and a fairly lengthy op-ed piece. Hi all, and welcome back. Back to life. Back to reality. That's certainly that reality of Venezuela. The reality of what's happened in the UK with the government services. And the reality we face here in America also. The next half hour will leave people under no illusions who the problem is, where the problems lay, how great attempts have been made to fix it, and who negated it. And don't be surprised if they chop in and out. Let me know, because I will repeat this piece if they muck about with it. So don't waste our time. So we've mentioned, this is the intel portion. We've mentioned since November of 2016, which is the month of the last elections, is America's been operating on credit. And they've used a number of them. But the latest credit is operating from credits from the Department of Defense. So the DoD is keeping the country running. Having gone through all the bank's credits, the country, and the pension credits, the country now has no funds except the DoD vouchers. But here's the kicker. All of those credits were issued due to delays to implement the RV currency revaluation bullshit. All of them. Now, that RV, for those who are new to the show, they've been trying to pull that off for the last 25 years and failed. And it will fail into infinity. Now, the credits has a limited timescale. And the issue is, even when the Chinese elders had funds, because they did have control of the accounts, for several generations, not once did they give any funds to America. None. So why would they do it now? That's one question. The fact that they haven't got sufficient assets to cover it, and certain clowns have been shown the evidence of that, then why are we putting this country in grave danger of replicating Venezuela? Now, clearly, these bogus Chinese elders won't provide the RV. And that is obvious now to all and sundry except the clowns, both outside and inside the United States military. I'll have more on them shortly. But there is a reason that on Tuesday of this week, China downgraded the United States credit rating to BBB+, because we have nothing left. Second news item. The cabal have been trying to implement fake securities throughout mainly Asia, which didn't work. It got found out again. But this may explain the Indonesian stock market event this week, when it shut down, because allegedly the roof caved in or some other nonsense. The question is it covering up something? I would say that was a guarantee. Fake securities may have been it. Item 3. The Hawaiian missile event. 100% bullshit. All of it. No evidence whatsoever of any missile fired or shot down. None. So all the clowns in the alternative media that are spouting this rubbish, it's time we expose them, in my opinion. It's fear-mongering on behalf of the cabal and the portal people, because more are not listening to the drivel of mainstream media. They're using the alternative media to drive narratives, and I've warned of this a lot in recent shows. We're being used. So there's no missile shot down, no heroic act by new white hat hopiums, now known as Team Q. Team Q is no different to Cliff High. And here's why. They're basing and releasing info on data off web traffic. It's the same format. And then forming it into a giant cryptic puzzle. All the bits that are on there have already been parts of news items or alternative media news items already released and jumbled up into a giant cryptic puzzle that has a semblance of something, because that's what pulled you in, but in reality is a whole heap of nothing. And it's all very AI to me. That's what Cliff High bases his narrative on. AI, bots. It's the same thing. Now, what was real this week, item 4, is an attempt at a catastrophic extinction level event was made in America this week on Tuesday. It failed. It was prevented. I haven't got the full details, but if we get time, time's in short supply at the moment, and there's that much going on, and there's that much being done to prevent stuff, to try and get stuff started, and it really is the land of confusion that I opened up with. So that fairly high level extinction level event was prevented on Tuesday. Some of those have the bruises to prove it. Oh well. Where are we next? Item number 5. You're going to hear more about an oil-based currency again, because the dinar and the RV and the TRN and the USN have all failed. Except now there's an increasingly under threat petrodollar. And also the Federal Reserve dollar is also under threat. It is going down on the markets, weakening. And so the oil-based currency is now back on the radar by the clowns. And this may explain the recent executive order for extra oil drilling off all our American coasts. Item number 6. They pull people in for giving food to the homeless. They pull Chinese CIA for alleged something that happened 10 years ago. And then you've got this bitch still wandering round. During the Haitian crisis, the Clinton Foundation did human experimentation on the natives before they were moved to America. And what they were attempting was a full DNA manipulation using live cholera vaccines as the vehicle to then introduce into the United States. Now, the original entity, as you will all know, is dead, but there's still clowns operating under the banner of the Clintons still walking around in our midst. And like I said on the Facebook page, Android has been probed more times than an ET abductee. How much more probing, investigations, inquiries, proofs are required before they pull Anne and her whole entourage in? How much more evidence do they need? Now, this is what the money that was collected via the Clinton Foundation was used for. And this is now at least the 4th attempt at mass infection of the populace, be it H1N1, Ebola, cholera, and the zombie virus, more commonly known as Zika, which should have been implemented in full in 2017. It failed. Next news item. People complain about people on benefits when the reality is we're only 1 or 2 paychecks ourselves being in the same position. And the thought is that my taxes are paying for people who don't work. Well, there's some element to that. But there's an even worse one. Because did you know the food stamp programme doesn't come out of our taxes? Oops. But our birth certificates. Yes, I can hear the jaw drop. You wonder where all our money goes, doesn't it? Next item. The clowns and their threats does not only apply to our team, known as the Foundation people, on the show, but also, well, technically they're not larger, but you'll get my drift, but also larger entities. And they threatened at least 2 countries this week and 1 major bank for attempting to work with the Foundation team to facilitate and implement funds for humanitarian change. At least 2 countries and 1 major bank was threatened. So anyone who says this has taken too long, you have to understand these are the parameters that we're currently working in. And if you thought that was bad, here's the next intel item. This will get you a little bit irate, I have to say. Angers me. And I wasn't born here. So, you want to know what the ultimate in not only stupidity, that is kind of par for the course for the clowns these days, but also treasonous behaviour by those at the top end of the US military, who in my opinion, and it will remain as my opinion, are not interested in doing anything of value to America, the country, or its people. They have been shown vast volumes of evidence of criminality by various groups, families and names, and have chosen to turn their collective backs on it in favour of the megalomaniacal psychopaths like the Rothschilds and their cohorts, the bogus Chinese elders. So this week, with the budget deadline looming and no funds imminent, there was a test done by the Foundation people to prove beyond all doubt we had the means and the live banking codes to support a new system and a new way of operating. Now, for those who are unaware, to get into the main banking system, you need access via codes. Now, all their codes are broken, shut down, or not valid anymore. All of them. And none of them have worked for the last 5 years. This is how long this kicking the can down the road has gone on. Not one of their codes has worked in the last 5 years. There's many high-profile names that all thought they had the codes for access. I've got this colour book and this colour book. You've all heard it. They don't work. Doesn't work on the new system, which is why they keep trying to push the old system back in again, and that fails also. Now, many of them have found out to their embarrassment that their codes didn't work. Oops. Couple of high-profile Pindars thought they would be able to use them. Oops again. So our team gave the United States military live banking codes at the weekend. Live banking codes with a nominal amount to prove we had the codes. If you've got the codes, you've also got the substantial funds that are within those accounts. The United States military checked it out, saw that the codes work for the first time in 5 years, and then left the money in there. And then turned round and did nothing and went on their way again, saying that the RV will be happening next Tuesday, which then rolled into a 24-hour delay to Wednesday, and it failed again. Are you getting the picture now? Now, the Foundation people also sent codes to Hong Kong as a tester, but with a very short closing window so that the funds that were left open with that code couldn't be removed. So the Chinese elders now think, and they are relaying information to all the imbecilic halfwits in Dinar land, that they have the codes now. Except they don't work. It was only as a checking influence to prove we had the codes. They've tried hacking it at least twice since. Utter halfwits. Won't work. It's not hackable. Oops. So now the message is clear to all. Our government all know, and also the United States of America Treasury, and I said that deliberately, that we have the working codes for the accounts, and that no one has seen a live banking code in the last 5 years. So it's now all proven beyond any doubt. And our message is, fix the mess properly, real swamp draining, not playing at it, and clear out the criminal elements and substantiate a way forward for the benefit of all. Until then, you are and will be held accountable to the public for your actions and inactions. Is that clear? The United States military, apart from draining all our resources and funds for the benefit of others, is now blocking a recovery path for the American country and its people. It's not news to me. I've warned that they've been an issue for a long, long time. They should have fixed things in this country if they were so American that they all make out that they are. They would have dealt with the issue back in 2001 in September, when it was clear to all and sundry with half a brain that 9/11 was an inside job, but they sat there. They've sat there and watched the agency in Langley with no congressional oversight, the DHS, the NSA, and all the other alphabet groups with no oversight on budget or policy. The US military have implemented a foreign policy that has been totally destructive and bankrupt the United States of America. They're offered a solution, a real live solution, and they turned it down in favour of Rothschild clowns. The public should not be under any illusion anymore who and what the problem is. Now, there's a lot of good people in the military. There's a lot of good people in the Pentagon, in the agencies. You're going to sit there and allow these clowns to decimate not only this country, because when you realise 85% of trading is done in US dollars, if it goes down, it affects 85% of the world, period. So we'll all turn into Venezuela. Just to keep Rothschilds happy? Next item. As predicted last weekend, the kicking the can of the budget will go back to February the 16th, it appears, as of today. Not fully decided. And then it will go on to March 31st. Now the reality is, and this will come as a shock to most, there has been no real, authentic budget for the United States of America for many, many years. No real budget. Why? Because they've been using fake mirror accounts and accounting, which you can't spend. It just looks like they've got funds when they haven't. Because behind those screens, there is these clowns who are siphoning those funds out of this country and into where they are using it to the utmost. They've raped and robbed this country blind. We've funded all the wars, and I mean all of them, for the last 80 years. Virtually every war that's gone on, the American people have funded at the behest of the clowns in the Pentagon and in the military. Now, as reported in December, those mirrors accounts have gone, and nobody has anything left to give. Nothing. Absolutely zip. Now, once the DOD credits runs out, which is what this country has ran on for the last 15 months, that's it. The DOD vouchers, which creates credits and credit lines, will run out sometime between now and the end of March, as I understand it. And then a total government and total bank shutdown could unfold for an indefinite period. Indefinite, but it depends how long they want to continue. Now, America come March the 31st will be completely insolvent. We expect that they will try and issue a new note, and also expect them to move the Federal Reserve to Asia. Start up the fun and games again. Now, once a country becomes insolvent, I think it's fairly obvious what happens next. Like what happened to Haiti. They picked the bones of the country. We've lent you all kinds of money, and so you can't pay us back, so then they buy up the whole of America for pennies on the dollar. Don't have to be a financial expert to work that out. This is the way these clowns work. Now, in my opinion, and my opinion only, this was exactly the plan the bogus Chinese elders, backed by the Rothschilds, wanted all along. And the idiotic clowns in our military are handing it to them on a plate. Now, you don't need me to point out, I hope, the grim outlook of that happening. Third world country is their plan. It's not ours, theirs. And sadly, I hate to say it, but it all sounds very much like 1929 again, folks. As it stands. Negotiations are ongoing, and some traction has been gained with some groups. But until good Americans stand up and stand up for this country in those positions and corridors of power, this is going to get brutally ugly for this country. There's no ifs or buts anymore. Next item. It's more of an op-ed piece, but again, it highlights some of the issues. Well, some will say I'm anti-Trump, and that is a fair point. But I've also supplied various evidences to support my stance as not anti-Trump, but rather anti-politician. Because unless they show proof of actually helping us, why should we blindly trust in these people who have never delivered for us before? You know, I've said it before, I'm not interested in parties, titles, badges, or personalities. My only concern is, are you working close to 100% for and by the people? It's my only view. It's what I stand for. And the overview of what we are facing here now and dealing with is we should never blindly trust anything, least of all politicians. 6 lobbyists per politician is the going rate in Washington, D.C. 6 per politician. Now, the reality as it stands now is, even if Trump is 90 to 100% for the people, it is quite clear now, given the previous news, intel, he has no foundation or platform to build or work from. None. Now, some will say, but you said he had a platform. And I agree, I did. And he did. But what we can't advocate for is hidden spies, agent provocateurs, threats made to people, their families and friends. And if you think all that is bad enough, there's another category that sickens me even more. those who have taken the seducements, be it titles, fame, or wealth offers, to come and help the cabal. Because that's what's been going on in the last number of months. Those people have a lot to answer for when the truth is fully revealed, in my opinion. Sellouts. Now, part of the problem we face, and it's something that should have been perhaps brought up earlier, but there's that much going on, we kind of overlook many things in life. What we allow, what we tolerate, how we go about things and how we don't. But there are groups on this planet that meet in secret and discuss how to shape the world, largely in their psychopathic image, I have no doubt. Like the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Group, Committee of 300. You get the gist. But who elected these clowns? I don't recall voting on them to decide our future. And the question is, why are we allowing them to operate in our midst without full transparency of what they're discussing? I would like to ask Trump, how about an executive order for the release of the transcripts of all those meetings and their details discussed be made available for public viewing? Seems fair, doesn't it? They get to decide on our future of how life goes on this planet, and the people have no input. That's fascism and dictatorship right in your face. And if WikiLeaks or any other have documents relating to those meetings, it's time they release them for the public. I'll be doing for time. Okay. Couple of more small pieces, and then I'm going to have a music break, and I'm going to go into something I touched on a few weeks ago. I want to go into more details. Word of warning to members of the alternative community. There is a number of agency and MKUltra type program members operating inside the alternative community. Some of those faces are rather familiar, I might add. And they are influencing others within our community and spouting utter shite. Not only about me, but other people as well. Now, this show and the host has been under quite a number of attacks recently, which was not unexpected. I did warn it would happen. And the reason is, those of you listening each week, is this show puts out too much truth. It's been proven to not only have the intel, but intel that actually bears out. Plus, we have exposed the many in our community for various levels of bullshit. And what you're finding now is their platform is collapsing in on them. This is why some of them are completely losing their sanity. It's folding in on them. And the resort to what is basically all they have left is projections and threats throwing mud at people and hoping some of it sticks. Yeah, good luck with that. Keenan tried that, didn't work. But it won't be just aimed at me. It'll be aimed at the group as well. And so this is another test we will come through by staying calm and standing your ground. They can't get at you or us unless we allow them to. Don't engage, don't play their game. If you have any concerns about me or the show or anything put in the show, I'm always available, always happy. Come and speak to me, either in private or put a question on the show page. Recently I did highlighted the lack of rain in Israel, and it was getting to be of biblical proportions of no rainfall, heading into a 5th year. I'm pleased to say that the rains arrived this week. Not only there, but also in Syria and Lebanon. Nice happy story. So that'll stall their caliphate games. Other things before the music break. Lots of people now are seeing, experiencing, feeling something very, very strange is ongoing in their lives. Nothing makes sense anymore. Strange occurrences, things popping up in front of you and then dematerialising, buildings coming and going, portals opening and closing, strange coincidences, events. A large number of people are reporting happening, but actually didn't. Maybe it happened in their world and not ours. I mentioned this before Christmas. Maybe it's becoming a lot more defined now, the two worlds we first brought up back in 2016. And from my perspective, it's now enveloping us more into your lives and those around you. What I will say is, don't fear it. It just is what it is. There's nothing to fear. You know, so-called real life on this planet is you know, there's plenty to fear about that. So maybe this will be better. I think it will. And this overlay will increase. It's the breakdown between the two worlds. Now, that overlay world, more of you are experiencing in the dream time. If you're anything like me, and I know some people are not modern people, it doesn't really apply to me, that. But you will probably likely find that it's not much fun waking up anymore. It's more fun being asleep. Why? Because you're doing more positive things. The futility of dealing with the psychopaths in this crossover world becomes more and more of a burden. You know, since the last show, 343,000 children have died. Either gone missing or died of malnutrition or generated diseases. 343,000. But do these saints care? No. Does government care? No. Now, the overlay world that some of you will permanently reside in eventually. I'm not giving timelines. There was a hint at a timeline where you may get your vision back. But it's not a guarantee. Now, some will permanently reside in the new world, and some won't, due to incorrect frequencies or not being organic. So ride the wave, and whatever you do, treat it as light-hearted and a bit of fun. Don't fear it, and don't lose it. You know, and perhaps we've all got the urge to move on. Hi all, and welcome to the next portion of the show. I've spent all week jotting down ideas, creating questions, questions that largely I won't answer, because this next piece is for the people to think on. You know how we like to get pondering and thinking and acting. Well, this piece covers a tidy gamut of things, and some things maybe you just haven't thought of, or maybe would rather not consider in some aspects. It will upset some, but recognise the piece is not definitive. It's just raising the question, and it brings into elements of trust and where we are on this planet. Now, I mentioned something as a feeder, or a feeler rather, or a feeder, that I put out a few weeks ago, and some didn't like it, and I get that. And the question is raised is there something radically wrong with this planet itself, and possibly the planetary mother? And so what is the evidence to question that? And is it something that needs to be looked at from a neutral standpoint? If you are immersed in a belief structure, it is rather hard to view it in its reality or its entirety. It needs something or someone external in a way to overview things and present the picture. Take, for example, the Catholic Church and its basis of religion. As a Catholic, not me, I'm talking about the people who are Catholic, although in essence I am. I'll explain that shortly. Is it easy for you as a born Catholic or registered Catholic, knowing the seemingly endless crimes of that system, and also be accepting of it? That's a question, not a statement. And that is a question only you can answer. Now, we've all heard the stories of not only men in the church, but women, being nuns also, of horrific and sadistic behaviours against humanity, but especially the children, via physical, mental or sexual abuse. We've heard of the financial skullduggery that has been exposed, and the vast wealth all collected off the people's labour. The birth certificate issue via control, as they call it, of the chattel. Nice name they have for us. The Vatican banking fraud, and the truth that the Italian mafia is ran for and on behalf of the Vatican. Now, there's roughly around 1.5 to 2 billion Catholics, or derivatives of Catholics, such as Protestants, who are basically all Catholics in religion. There is no religion called Protestant. There never was. The truth is, a Protestant movement who were protesting, which was done by Catholics against the crimes of the church in the 1500s, morphed into another religion to play the divide and conquer game all around the world. Now, Rome has either created or invented all other religions. They've had their finger in all the pies and has distorted all spiritual practices of various groups all around the world. Sadly, there are many Catholics all over the world which live and exist in abject poverty and harsh, cruel conditions, even those not in war zones. Whilst they sit there in their gold-laden ivory towers in a complete lap of luxury like the priestly gods of the past, with no attempt to correct the issues. In fact, completely ambivalent to it all. Why is that? Could it be that is the way it's supposed to be? Or could it be because we have allowed it to be that way? Now, recently we've heard stories on this show where the Humanity Unplugged episodes 1 and 2 of how the church actively sought to kill off the person more commonly known as Jesus, but is actually the less familiar name of Vladimir and his wife Mary Magdalene, and children from around 1000 to 1100 AD. Not zero. They chased them down to kill off the bloodline. Again, the question is why? They have burned people at the stake for going against their ideologies, be it witches, psychics, scientists, visionaries, contactees, Renaissance people, heretics, you name it. You question them and their presumptuous authority, and you not only die, but you die with maximum fear and pain. There are some ways of killing people that is far less painful than the sinister examples that they chose. Ritual sacrifice and burning people alive. And yet there was vast ceremonies laid on for these sacrifices. All laid on for the people for those events. And what did the people do? They all came to watch and baying for the victim's death, then celebrated it. But the question is, why would they do that with no corroborative evidence to support the slain? All comes down to trust and who we trust. There's lesser known issues to do with the church of organ harvesting, child trafficking and Satan worship. They've all surfaced recently and been exposed. Again, I ask, is this what the Catholic Church purpose is all about? But another issue not fully revealed is the sacrificial altar inside of the Vatican. The higher dimensional hostages, all held deep below the Vatican. Many years. Some of them are gone now, released. And many of you will have seen the statues around the churches of demonics reptilian and serpent worship within the confines of the Vatican? Are all these demonic reptilian beings and serpent depictions and statues, are they all just a sign of a deluded conspiracy theory's mind that has lost its way, or an actual depiction of real events and representations of who they represent and who they stand for? Now, the question is not whether they are real depictions of demonics, reptilians, or serpents. The question is, why are they in the house of so-called sanctuary or sacred place? The point is, they shouldn't be there to begin with, real or not. Then after all that collection, they have added another layer. Probably the most damaging in some people's eyes. Only when you get the full knowledge you realise how much damage has been caused. Via knowledge, or lack of. Vast libraries that tell the tale of our real history, all locked up. And again, the question is why? What are they hiding, and for what purpose? Why does something that is allegedly there to be an example for all, teach morals and betterment according to them anyways, exhibit such a heinous, psychotic and completely insane behavioural examples? Now, having heard all that, and most of you will have heard some of it, or all of it, but here's the kicker question. Why are Catholics still going to church? Now, I know there will be some of our members who do go to church, and that is their choice. And it's not for me to tell you you shouldn't. It's your choice. But the question is, are you not, by making that choice of going to church, knowing what they've been up to and stood for, in essence facilitating the above horrors? Again, that's not a statement, that's a question. So back to the issue of the show. There have been many species and races that have visited and stayed on this planet. Hydra, reps and dragons, Draco reptilians, greys, tall, short and medium, tall blondes, tall whites, who are perhaps better known as the Watchers, mantids, Dorsey, jinns, angels, demons, gremlins and trolls, the Fae, elves and dark elves, more commonly known as Batman. And he ain't good. Trust me. Aquatics, some human type or humanoid type and some not, and various other humanoids. And in my experience, none of them have in total appeared to live in any sort of harmonious way, be it amongst themselves or interaction with others, and in particular with us. Even the angels, who throughout this planet's history and narrative are largely looked upon as angelic and all things nice and good, but even they fell when they came here. Started breaking cosmic law and fornicating with the female humans here, to a point where the females, if ancient scriptures are to be believed, decided they no longer needed man and wanted to only stay with the angelic gods. And a mass genocide took place on this planet to eliminate the male humans. Now this is hardly angelic or all things good, is it? The dragons are revered all over the world, particularly in Asia. But the English word dragon and Latin word Draco derive from the Greek drakon, a dragon, serpent of huge size, or water snake. And for those of you who like a laugh, the term drake means drakon, aka dragon. It's a dragon without wings. Now the more nasty of the dragon groups are the Hydra Draco system, Hydra Draconian. They're very nasty, spiteful and violent, and best avoided unless well equipped. For those unaware, Hydra and Draco are different species, and the term most of us use for the Draco is lizard being, a bipedal lizard with some human characteristics. And there's another version of the Draco lizard beings. Their royalty are white and have wings, and not angelic ones at that. Now there are many sources throughout the internet where you can get a gist of the Draco, and they're rolling it. Shane Laruna's blog tells you a lot on that one. It hasn't been the saviour program that they had put forward to humanity 16,500 years ago. A humanity, I might add, that was struggling with no or limited tech and weaponry, and struggling with the total onslaught of war raging across the planet that was nothing to do with us. Yet again, an example of something arrives here and it goes batshit crazy. That right, Dave? The war then involved the Atlanteans and other outside forces. The Draco offered to end our suffering and provide us with tech, and in return they took over the planet, which worked well for a bit, and then as per usual it turned ugly. They have operated mainly from the shadows over the last 16,500 years, and thankfully now their contract here is null and void and no longer carry a major threat, though they can cause some annoyance. But the main issues that permeated everything on this planet has now all but gone away. The Draco controlled all governments, all banking, the collateral accounts, or the World Trust, and other various control systems. They've looted our planet via off-world trade and harvested a huge amount of humans over time for what they see as their right. Due to the genetics issue, they are one of 24 races to have injected their genetics into the human form here, and all of them think that gives them the right to control us and the planet. Now, a lot of meetings and talks have been held over the last number of years, and many have stepped away from that nonsense now and are not interacting. Now, the Draco were here before this current version of humanity, but left to conquer many other worlds and systems, and left the parents, the covens, and the lower clowns to operate on their behalf, There was still one or two of the bigger ones, or the better known names, left behind, until recently when they were removed also. So then the Greys, often shown as nice cuddly little beings in the movies, Paul and Phone Home E.T. and all that, and yet they have done untold damage here with their abductions. The Greys built the AI, something few will know. The Greys actually built the AI and were operating it on behalf of the Mantids and the Draco. Now, thankfully, a number of their differing groups have had enough of being pawns also, and they themselves have largely stepped down. The Mantids, yes, you, Mr. Parks, bug-eyed bastards. They were the brains behind the AI matrix construct. They're very clever beings, given that. Just wish they'd done it for better purposes. Which they had developed due to their hive mind mentality. They are often in league with the Draco when it comes to that type of control system. And they are largely run by the females, who completely rule their worlds and also the beings, which is kind of a common theme amongst the insects on this planet also, all protecting the queens. Now, the Atlanteans were a mix of beings on a craft, not an island. They were master geneticists and responsible for many of the abominations seen in depictions across the planet. They were also responsible for the Chimera group, Cobra often refers to. History books and narrative often speaks highly of and how great the Atlanteans were. The reality is far different, and that is another myth. Just because you're advanced in tech doesn't make you better than others. If all that tech, like the clans we have in this country, is used for weapons. So the Atlanteans were far from benevolent. And near, because of their fleeing to this planet to escape some other group, near completely destroyed this planet once and for all. Now, they came here to hide from a previous war which they were involved in, and we suffered the consequences of their folly. Still think Atlanteans are good? Because I don't. Fays, fairies, angels are also often portrayed as nice here. But there are many stories and tales of them not being too nice either. Just not. Too often throughout our history here, those that were labelled good were not. And those stated as bad were not necessarily all bad either. The Dorsay, D-O-R-S-A-Y, many of you may not be familiar with that term or that particular being. They reside largely in the Swiss Alps region here, but their main interactions are from the lower astral realm. Nasty little buggers. Now, those of you who have had their PSI fields opened, so you've got holes in your aura via injury, drugs or alcohol, or some of the so-called empowerment exercises like yoga and Tai Chi that has been done without shielding yourself first, can allow these very small greenish looking gremlin types to attach to the body where the opening is, and they energy chomp badly as well. So injuries that should heal in a reasonable amount of time take much longer to heal because of the attachment. That's got you all thinking now. I can hear all your brains ticking over. I had this. The good news is these critters are not as hard to get rid of as some of the others. A nice cricket bat works well. Just one slap and a stamp. But they are a big problem to the host who is unaware, or people who don't believe there is not a whole other world all around us. Jinns are far more prevalent than people think also. If you encounter them in sleep time, they largely appear as a dark human form or a smoky mass, but with glowing eyes. Those 5-foot human-like shadow forms you see briefly out of the corner of your eye are mainly them. These are the entities who can interact despite shielding. Why? As too many shield down to the floor and don't complete the oval sphere shield. Oops. They are often also used as a threatening tool by those who work with them. Indeed. The aquatics. Some will have heard about that and some of you won't. Of which there is a few different ones. But if you want to get the gist of what the aquatic looks like, go and watch the movie The Shape of Water. That is a good depiction of those type of beings. A couple of months ago, I met with the aquatics. I was taken to a meeting with them by the dolphins to an underwater crystal city. They have provided some help here over time and were prevalent in cleaning some of the mess the Deep Horizon oil spillage did in the Gulf recently. Largely they are a neutral group, though they have provided us with some support. Maybe the Argentinian sub had more than we bargained for inside it, and so maybe it got removed. So that's the gist of the interactions here. There have been more, but little of which has been overly beneficial to us as humans. And this is the issue. Now, here are some of the main interactions they have introduced that most on this planet are oblivious to. They have introduced some helpful interactions like education, agriculture, astronomy, in some cases history, and language, which in the past was not made up of various languages and dialects, but we had a common language. But as stated in the passage of Genesis, the Lord was not happy with one language and how humanity was developing a common bond. They're coalescing too well together, was the concern. And so the Lord, the person everyone worships, who is Anu, the Draco Reptilian King, came down and infused extra languages to confuse humanity and implement the classic divide and conquer tactic so familiar on this planet now. The ultimate language being Latin, which is their main language. You notice it's in law, and none of us understand it. If a lawyer tells you you understand law, they're a liar. You're not meant to understand it. It's also used in pharmaceuticals, so we don't understand the names. And it's also in agriculture, so we can't work out the medicines. Coincidence? No. A lot of off-world visitations here, having the main being about trade and resources. This planet is rich in resources of various kinds, be it metals, minerals, or our unique living water. Or worse, us. Resource. The Sumerian tablets detail how one of the 5 species races of the Anunnaki came here to mine gold. That's just but one example. Would have been more sinister purposes, using humans to fight wars here and elsewhere, using humans as a food source, using humans as an energy looshing battery, and also looshing our soul energy, most of which was done with our consent, due to our chronic lack of knowledge. And if you think that they asked you a question, will you do it in a way that is understandable, think again. They don't. They use word magic. It's a bit like when you sign for the mortgage and you think when you pay that mortgage off, you own the house. When you've signed to be a tenant permanently. Tells you, innit? But do we still all sign it? Yes, we did. And that's consent. It's trickery. But then we should be more observant. We shouldn't be as trusting. And this is the key to this piece. What should we put our faith and trust in? There's others like Ra and his Lord of One bullshit. Tells you of the harvesting of humans at certain times in our history. This is the Anunnaki goons again. Where a group of humans may have developed a higher vibration. And what happens next? They just harvest them straight off the surface into their waiting plant ships. Now there are references within the Bible that talks of rapture, where mainly Christians, but other religions as well, all think they're rising into the sky to meet and join Christ or God. Yeah, right. Rapture is a fancy term for soul harvesting. Come and take me, Lord, I'd like to meet with you. That is a consent. But if the Lord is not what you think it is, and it is what we know, which is Anu, you've just allowed yourself to be soul harvested by Anu. This is where our chronic lack of knowledge on this planet that the likes of the Vatican is denying us. Now, there have been many examples of whole groups of humans just vanishing without trace, like the Aztecs, the Mayans, some Native American groups, and the less commonly known is the Rus people, the Tartarian people, and also the Easter Island people. There are others. Just completely vanished without a trace. Göbekli Tepe people vanished without a trace. No bones. And not only did the people vanish, so did the village. Somebody poured vast tonnage of sand across that whole complex to cover it up. Why would you do that? There is and has been much talk about the Pleiadians all being good and coming here to help us. But the Alcyon group from the Pleiades were actually the guardians of this planet in the past. And what did they do? They went bad as well. They sold us out for tech to the Reps. Not the Draco, the Reps. Different. So why should we trust them, the Pleiadians? Now, Alcyon has a human representative from their people in the alternative community. He started off okay, but recent developments don't look too good. Now, throughout our history, we've had all kinds of councils of various names at various times, and yet none of them did anything to prevent the subversion of the human populace. There's no evidence supporting that they did. Now, we do have another council here now currently, and we finally have human representatives on there where we can now at least put forward our case on behalf of humanity. That's never been the case before, so that is an improvement. But can we trust them 100%? Can we really trust anything or anyone these days 100%? When so many have used us for an agenda. And what we require is, apart from a whole heap of knowledge, so we know what's been going on and what to look for the pitfalls, we need a definitive and long-lasting proof of benevolence towards the humans on this planet that I believe will be required before we trust anything from outside of here again. Is that sad? Yes, it is. Absolutely. But the saddest case on this planet is very few people trust themselves. And this has been a key issue in our downfall. So because we don't trust ourselves, that then invites in the saviour program, because the trust then goes into somebody or something else. So our lack of self-trust has been rather damaging here. So that then invites in the Saviour program. And I don't think that any that listen to this show believe that that has been useful to us in this lifetime or previous ones. Because clearly it's not. So as you can see, interactions with and from off-world entities have largely been a negative experience for us humans. And it's something we have to be wary of going forward until we gain sufficient knowledge and truth here or on the new earth. Now, as detailed previous, despite all that, it doesn't negate the behavioural traits we have adopted here. That's us. Narcissism, unbalanced ego, nasty, divisive, uncaring, service to self, agenda-driven, selective breeding for elevation above the masses, via titles, bloodlines or families. We've also found and implemented a vast array of ways to make money. Doctors in America telling 2,400 patients they had cancer when they didn't, as it's worth $300,000 per person to treat that disease that was cured back in 1926 and possibly earlier. We have others peddling drugs for profit, pharmaceuticals, prostitution, selling animal body parts as trophy items, chopping down vast amounts of ancient trees for profit when hemp trees are easier to grow and quicker to harvest. Oil as a technology was rendered obsolete back in 1906, and yet it continues to generate vast profits, destruction, wars and death to this day. I saw a video this week of a dead child packed in ice, sold for organ harvesting by humans. You have people agreeing to have a kidney or a portion of the liver removed for financial gain. Child trafficking, child slavery, children used as sex toys for profit. Even in our own community, we have a whole heap of charlatans selling chakra removal, Akashic records, holographic magic chips, foreign currencies and fresh air currencies. The list's endless, but you get the drift. So the issue is, why the obsession with money? And must everything have a monetary gain or purpose? Has it not taken us away from who and what we are? And because we are so enamoured with it, we have ended up as the only species on the planet that pays to live or exist on it. The question is why? Yes, we have received tech from off-world. But it's like giving a 5-year-old the nuclear button and expecting them not to press it. We were largely not ready for that tech. That ultimately leads to destruction of everything. We've been there before. You don't give advanced technology to what we are basically, children. Denied, we are still children because we've been denied the knowledge and the chance to grow. The question is, why? And too much of that tech has been misused and weaponized against us. Again, why? Because we were and are not ready for that level of advancement. Almost every alleged advancement in technology, including some of which we have created ourselves. Don't think we've got all this tech from off-world. We're not creators, we're nothing. But it's all been implemented in such a way of how can we weaponize this? Every piece of bloody tech. Weapons, weapons, weapons and weapons. When we need food, shelter, health and knowledge. Then we look at the insect world here. Are they any better? No. Some of them eat their own partner after being made pregnant. Some other insects, after mating, all the males die off. Why? Many of them in the insect world, it's not just the insects either, are predatory in nature. And this is a common theme on this planet. Predatory. Why is that? The fish, the birds, the mammals, all have the same predatory nature. There may be some odd examples, I don't know, but largely it's all the same. And this led me to question, is something radically wrong here? Now, we can all make attempts to blame this group, blame that group, blame the cabal, blame the Draco, etc., etc., etc. But the fact that not one particular group has exhibited for any length of time the basics of humility, caring, sharing, service to others, showing love for all, compassion and empathy. Of which empathy there's a chronic lack of on this planet. Because if those who have no empathy experience half of the pains an empath does, most of this shit would have gone away a long time ago. If you saw that kid in ice and you got a pain in the heart, you're an empath. It is a physical pain. It's not pleasant. And you got people just dismissing it. That's not my kid. Really? Those 7 things, humility, caring, sharing, service to others, showing love for all, compassion and empathy, all have a common theme. None of them cost money. Just your time and energy, and a little bit of effort. Then we come to the planet and its mother, the planetary being, as she is called. And then add in the Lord, or God, and even Source. Why have they all allowed this abomination to happen? We're all told it's all loving and all caring. Why is it being allowed to happen? If, as we are told, they're all loving and caring and benevolent, why is it still going on? Why hasn't there been some support for the people who want to be the change? Who don't want to carry on the psychopathic behaviours of too many on this planet? Not only just humans. It goes right across the board, and this is where I raised the question. Now, some people will react to that question, and I do get that. But the object of this piece is to get people to think on things and not just blindly accept what we are told or given as truth. The evidence, regardless of which you choose to worship or follow, is fairly damning when it's looked at with an open mind. And this is the world we have today. An uncaring, greedy, comparative mindset mired in consumerism that is destroying us all. But deeper questions remain as to why so many species and races suffer the same negative or dark consequences when they arrive here. Where's the golden people? Like they said in the 100 series, where's all the good people? And the answer was, there is none. You have to create them. But we've never been given a chance to create a better people or a better world or a better species. Why has the planet and the mother not helped? Why has your Lord or your God or your source not helped? These are all valid questions. Again, they're not statements, they're questions. So why have so many species and races and angels all come here and fell? Can it be, or can it mean, most of the species are all bad? Question mark. Can it be the psychotic AI influence? Question mark. Can it be the fractal virus thing? Question mark. Was this planet placed in a frequency zone not conducive to organic or harmonious life patterns? Question mark. Or can it be that there's something wrong with this planet and ultimately the planetary mother? Question mark. Those questions are not for me to answer, as we all have our own ideas and theories. But the overview look at it from a neutral background does beg the question. Was it the planet all along that sends all beings into a downward spiral and into predominantly predatory? That is the great question that remains unanswered. But it's something to ponder on, and something we should always hold on to, and something that's badly lacking on this planet. Hi all, and welcome. We'll get a few questions in. Things went on a bit longer tonight with the bulk of the intel, and also that last piece. I don't do stuff to get people to react. I know some will, some won't like that piece. But then we have to look at things through a different set of eyes and ears than what we've been told and witnessed. Because the reality is most of what we've been taught is utter crap. And we're relearning. So that's why most of that piece wasn't statements, it was questions. Questions for you all to consider in your quiet time. I know people don't like others being critical of the planetary mother. And I get that. I do get that. If that's what you put your trust or belief in. But you heard all the examples of ones that came here and fell, including our own fall, because we've lost our way badly when we're doing some of the things we are to each other and some of the methods of making money. It literally defies words and comprehension. And like I said, we can blame all kinds, but ultimately we have the choice to not do that, participate that, or be that way. Now, many of us aren't. But it's that nature as to why the American government and other governments, it's not just the American, try all 209 on the brink or already bankrupt. There has to be a reset of some way. But as far as I can tell you, we will not be compromising. This planet will not be put in jeopardy for these clowns to carry on their goose stepping and control and death and destruction and have nots. Will it get ugly? Sadly it will. Can it be stopped? There's always hope. Negotiations are still ongoing. With most, if not all of the groups. You know, eventually we may get a breakthrough. And we'll have a real happy show. I look forward to that. I don't like reading out bad news. Nobody does. But I like less reading out hopium and bullshit. And sadly there's a plethora of that all over what is now largely a failed alternative community. It's literally collapsed in on itself. Too many have jumped the bandwagon. Jordan Maxwell this week jumped over to Gaia TV. Bye, Jordan. And others sold out their integrity for a piece of green paper. Is it really worth it? Not to me, it ain't. I won't be sold out for nothing. That you can guarantee. So the person who asks the question on the pin post about who I am and what's my background, you've just got it there and then. heart on the sleeve, average, everyday guy who won't compromise humanity for nothing. No agenda other than seeing humanity back in the way it should have been. I'm not in bed with covens. I'm not in bed with rogue agencies, rogue politicians, etc., etc. Like I keep saying, for those who want to know the background, it's all in the name of the show. That's why I called it that. Right, we've come near pretty much the end. Do you think it's possible we moved into another reality? I covered that earlier, so I hope that helped you. You spoke last year about time changing. A week feels like 2 days. I also covered a bit of that earlier. You said a comment on the Facebook that the energy blockage was shifted last week. Yes, it was. No further details. Where are we? Trying to pick a question out of this lot. Could you explain a bit more about the cities that are domed? Well, some of them are domed, Toronto being one, parts of California is another. You can see them under certain conditions. You will see the dome. How is it that transportation methods are limited to moving in and out without noticing? I'm not understanding that question too much. If you mean how they're getting in and out of the domes, like the shielding I mentioned earlier, the dome stops at the floor. Transportation doesn't. There's far more transportation miles of it below our feet than there is on the surface. I presume this is still the dome, can it become a lockdown and used as a weapon on us? Some cases. What you may find, those in the dome are where a lot of the rogue elements are. Oops. So they're not going to lock down and weaponize against themselves. Chemtrails irritating the eyes. Yep. How is this an even playing field? Well, I think that last piece covers that. Is the UPU looking for more lessons in understanding compassion as they get their orders? I have no idea what the UPU are up to currently. I deal more direct and indirect with the council. Does the council declare itself as infallible? I wouldn't say so. They realised things have not gone well, not only on this planet, but the whole damn universe. And perhaps they're learning as they go along also. This place was cloaked for long enough. The horrors that took place in here were not always seen. It's not an excuse, but it does give some understanding. Are they waiting for us? Yes, in essence, but I do feel we need a minimal intervention that is not obvious, and 4 proposals, none of which include violence, have been issued in the past fortnight, and we await the response. So we'll see. Does the term Vatican actually mean worship of the divine serpent? Well, there's sufficient evidence, and I covered that earlier. Pretty much, yeah. Snakes and lizards. I keep hearing about Obama being the Antichrist, or it being Prince William, who shaved his head, or shaved the last 3 hairs off his head today, for whatever reason, I have no idea. I don't particularly care, to be quite honest. Or Prince Harry, is there such an entity, or is the Antichrist bullshit? If there is an Antichrist on Earth, who is it? It can be anyone. It's the Neo and the Smith again, isn't it? Good and evil. It's in all of us. It's all about the third choice. Do you want to be good, or do you want to be evil? Or do you want to be the balance and just tilt onto one side? But you still have the propensity to go the opposite way. You can be evil and still swing the pendulum the other way. And it's the same with good. So, have we established who and what Christ is? To begin with, is the question. And is it real? Or is he real? And so, if it's not, then how can we have an Antichrist? There are questions that need to be fully answered before we established as an Antichrist. We've got to establish whether there's actually a Christ to begin with, and what is the real terminology behind it. Christ is Krishna. Same word. Is Krishna the Christ? This is part of the problem, our lack of knowledge. The humanity, I'm going to leave that question. It's going to give too long an answer, and I've gone over the 3 hours already. The background, I think I've covered that. How did they ever get involved with Drake now that we see he's not credible about many things? Well, I will always be grateful for Drake because he gave me my platform. So I will be grateful for that. I didn't like how it ended. It was kind of inevitable. I did forecast it. I did see ahead. And it had to play out, but it had to play out in a way where what I was stating was proven to be valid. There's a lot I've left out because I don't think it's necessary. But they know if they play games, I have hammers that can be delivered. Truth hammers. But I think we've all had enough of drama. Drake's going his own way. A lot of what I've heard recent certainly doesn't match any sort of reality. But that's Drake. And it's up to you whether you choose to believe it or you don't. Me, personally, I think it's rather sad. Any truth to earthquakes in California causing portions of the seacoast falling in the ocean? Not to my knowledge. I can't say I've checked everything, so... Is the spiritual war about demons trying to reincarnate back to Earth after death? No. Are they demons or are they angels? Or are they both? After that last piece, you may want to reconsider. Can you explain about the portal off the Sarasota coast? Not much, only that it did exist. And a lot of the portals have since been cut off. Right, I think I've had enough. Apologies to the ones who didn't get your questions answered. They will go in next week, unless we've got another long piece to deliver and we run out of time again. I hope you think long and hard about that piece of it. That's, it's, like I said, it's designed to get you to think for yourself. Well, there's plenty of places where you can find support and evidence, not just this show, about many of the things that are brought up. Some of it you will have heard for the first time. Some elements of certain entities and what have you. But it's to get you to think. It doesn't look good. It appears that every species and or race or living being appears to go badly wrong when it arrives here. And so something is not right. As for the intel, again, it's not pleasant, but then we're not in a pleasant world at the moment. If we were, we would have happier news. What we're dealing with is a dying entity that clings desperately to power by their shortened fingernails, but I think they've bit most of them off by now. And eventually we all hope sanity will prevail and the people will prevail. We will continue to negotiate and bargain on behalf of humanity as best we can. But as always, we're playing against the stacked deck. And that's where I think the council should provide the support we've requested. Then the parameters change without the need for violence, and then we may get an opportunity to go forward and start what will be a long journey of trying to correct this planet, the people, and all living entities. It will be a long journey, but it'll be a happier one. It'll also be painful, but you've heard a lot of truths in the last 2 years, even on this show, but not pleasant to hear. But they're less pleasant when they're hidden and you don't know, which is why we've given so much of our power and energy and soul essence away. It's only now, as we are gaining knowledge, that we're reclaiming it all back. But the one thing mentions, or two things that came out of that long piece that should be remembered: we must learn to trust ourselves. If you don't trust yourselves, you're always going to fall for the saviour program. And the final thing is the 7. Those 7 things: humility, caring, sharing, service to others, showing a love for all, compassion and empathy. None of them cost a single cent, and neither should it. They can't take those things away from you unless you allow them. Remember that. You will hear from me next on Saturday with an evening with Thomas. I'm looking forward to starting that back up again. And also on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, OYM Radio, challenging Thomas. And I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. Wasn't as heavy, or maybe it was. It all depends on perspective. But I hope it's given you plenty to ponder and things to work on from your aspect. If we all worked on ourselves, none of us would tolerate what's going on now. Not one of us. And that's the key. Right. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now. And remember, we weren't born to follow.